Welcome to A Woman's Brew, where women talk about beer. Today, we're donning our lab coats and goggles as we become the latest test subjects for Elusive, UnBarred and Lallamand's Experiments in Yeast. I'm Joanne, and this is Tori.
Hello.
And we're two beer-loving women on a mission to get more people drinking and talking about great beer. Come join us. When I saw this set of 4 beers from Elusive and UnBarred that we used, that was basically the same beer, but brewed with different yeast strains, I was like, Tori Pell is going to want to drink all of those next to each other.
And I did.
And we should definitely do an episode about that.
I put in a whole order at Elusive.
Yeah.
Like, because the fact that I was just like, well, this is a whole episode, and then I'm like, but then I went on their website, and then I was like, and then I want that,
yeah,
and then I want that, because normally if I want something, I'll just drive down there, but I didn't have the time to drive down there, so I was like, I have to put in a web order, and I guess I'm gonna go this and this and this and this. Yeah, I was very excited about this. I originally wrote a whole thing about like, this is what it is, and then we're gonna have Alix on in a minute.
Alix
from Lallemand. And she's going to talk to us about the yeast strains. But initially, I was like, let me summarize what this is. And then we were going to bumble our way through yeast stuff. And then she's way cooler and more knowledgeable on yeast than I could ever pretend to be from a Google search.
So we've had Alix on before, but in her previous life when she was a brewer. And Alix now, she'll tell you in a minute, she works at Lallemand. She'll go into all of that, but we wanted to have her back for ages. So not only was this a great time to drink a bunch of beers that are the same but brewed with different yeast and see the fun that's that, it's also a great excuse to get Alix on and talk about yeast. So without further ado, let's get Alix on and talk about the Experiments in Yeast series. Well, we're very excited. We have the lovely Alix back with us. She's in a new capacity this time. If you didn't see Alix with us last time, she works somewhere different now. She's going to be very knowledgeable about yeast now. Alix, tell us who you are, where you come from, what you're doing here today.
Hi, I'm Alix. I have been on the podcast before under my previous guise as brewer. And now for the last 2.5 years, I have worked as technical sales manager for the UK for a company called Lallemand, who are a Canadian biotechnology company, and specifically covering the UK selling, providing technical support for brewing yeast, dried brewing yeast application. But Lallemand is a huge company of which brewing is a really teeny, tiny part. Sorry to disappoint all the beer fans.
It's still very.
I feel like
more lucrative.
Yeah,
I feel like we've had conversations before, like at least Joe and I have, and then like in passing with you as well, about like, oh, we need to get Alix on to talk about yeast. We need to get Alix on to talk about yeast, because I feel like yeast in general is just so interesting to talk about in the spectrum of beer, that like we're like, yeah, oh my god, Alix is so knowledgeable about like all things yeast. We need to have her on to talk about it. And then it just
don't tell Joe, but it's definitely the coolest ingredient.
It's not. We have,
I mean, I flip-flop depending on what it is
about this sort of thing.
It's not as tangible as hop.
Yeah,
like there's true. A lot. You can't like open a packet of yeast and smell it and go, yeast.
It's also really difficult to photograph, I should imagine, as well, like to make it look good.
I really want to get a photo. You know when people like rub and hold the hops
with like the yeast.
You really want to get someone doing that with like a handful of dried yeast.
Right.
Unless you like absolutely know what dried yeast looks like, I feel like most of the public would just be like, yeah, a photo of a brewer smelling some yeast.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's. I always feel like yeast is really under discussed when it comes to it, and like the importance that it plays. So that's why we were like, every time we have something that's got like an interesting yeast in it, or we're like, oh, variations of a specific beer that like some ingredients change but not a lot, we're like, oh my god, this is like so interesting in that regard. So we've always been like, we need to get Alix on to talk about it. And then I think the stars aligned because we got these beers because we thought this is going to be really interesting, and we got the beers already, and then Joe was like, I've just had a brainwave. should we talk to Alix about this? And I was like,
Let's get Alix.
absolutely yes, because we wanted to talk to her about yeast anyways.
It's the perfect opportunity to discuss yeast.
Yep.
I promise you. I mean, there's never all time is a perfect opportunity to discuss yeast. I will always chat about yeast with people any time of day. But yeah, these beers are a really easy and accessible way into just the highlights of yeast. But because there are so many inputs to yeast, unlike kind of hops, there's not as many ways of tweaking the flavour. Whereas there in yeast, there's a whole lot of factors that go into it for outputs that can change dramatically.
Oh, there you go.
Is there anything that, as a non-yeast educated person, like somebody listening to this, that's like, I don't really know a lot about, like, I know that yeast is needed in beer, but I don't know a lot about it. Is there any context or anything that you need to kind of give in terms of upfront before we get into the beers? Is there anything anyone needs to know?
Yeast is a microorganism. It's a fungus. It's a single cell.
Delightful.
It is the most studied eukaryotic cell on the planet. Yeast is responsible for producing 99.99999% of alcohol on this planet. You can synthesize ethanol, but there's literally no reason to. Why would you? When you have this tiny little yeast that will create it for you, and essentially it eats up all the sugars and it will convert that into ethanol and carbon dioxide and also more yeast. It's the only ingredient you put into beer where you get more out the end than you put in, and you can keep reusing it as well if you've got good clean practices. So yeah, it's under discussed. So it doesn't actually just make alcohol, it also contributes to flavors, which we'll discover today. It also contributes to some of the compounds that are put in from hops and from malt through a process called biotransformation. It can actually make some of those flavor compounds change into different flavor compounds that you actually physically can't get in hops and malt alone. So there's lots of different factors to it, and it comes in kind of two main categories. So you've got lager yeast and ale yeast. I don't think any of these, I think all of these are ale yeast, so Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Yeah, I think they're all ale yeasts. But if you think of lager and ale yeast as kind of two channels of yeast, if you took the same wort and you fermented them with an ale yeast at a warm temperature, or you took the same wort and you fermented it with a lager yeast at a colder temperature, you will get two very different beers that will taste like a pale ale or a lager, purely because of the yeast. That's how much of a contribution it has.
Yeah. That's exciting.
Which is why I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough with how important it is.
We're about to find out how different a yeast can make a beer. Because all of
Let's go.
Same base, different yeast.
Just very different yeast. All right, so Experiments in Yeast number 1 has LalBrew BRY 97 in it. And this has created a pale ale, according to the label. All right, what does BRY 97 give us, or should we be looking for?
So BRY 97 is, so these are, I should mention, these beers are a collaboration between Elusive Brewery in Reading and UnBarred Brewery in Brighton, and they and then Lallemand as well. And they did these 4 different beers using the same base malt, super basic base malt. And I think they just use mosaic hops all in hot side, no dry hop, so it just lets the yeast shine through. I think the only thing that was changed was the fermentation temperature. I don't think, or maybe the pitch rate as well, but basically not messed around with in terms of like mashing profile and things like that. So there will be flavors in it that you might anticipate there be flavors in things that there's not, but we can go into why that happens later on. So the BRY 97 is Elusive's house yeast.
Okay.
Andy uses it for all of his brews. He's a big fan. It is a West Coast strain. It's pretty neutral. There's not a huge amount of esters that come off of it, which means that you're really going to want to use it in like hop forward beers. This not necessarily being a hop forward beer because it hasn't got those dry hops in it. Clean, neutral. It's got pretty high attenuation. So attenuation means how much of the sugars it will consume. So you start off with your wort that's full of sugars, and after fermentation, you lose about depending on the yeast, you'll lose about 70 to 90% of those sugars will be turned into alcohol. So this is quite high attenuating. So it's more in those like mid 80s range. It's also really flocculent, which means that it clumps together and drops out and gives you more of a clear beer. Ergo, Joe's beautiful demonstration.
It's pretty clear.
Yeah. So what do you guys think?
I took a sip and I was like, oh my God, I love it so much. My face was
sure
like,
Andy will be
oh,
thrilled.
and
Yeah,
I
Andy will
poured
be well
more.
excited.
Honestly, the recipe that he's chosen and like what he's done, I'd like to caveat, I'm not actually drinking this. I'm drinking something else. This is not that big. It hasn't changed dramatically since it's got to my house. So Andy will be thrilled because, and brewers alike would be thrilled because that is a very cheap recipe.
It
like
genuinely, honestly, it's so, for my taste buds, it is so Moorish. Like I could sit and have many, many cans of this. It's only 4.5% as well. It's not like it's like, you could sit and drink. I could sit and drink this all day and be very, very happy to drink it all day.
Very like the flavour profile to me is kind of sherbety, but it's not sweet. That you're right with that cleanness, like, and where it's used up all the sugars, there's a good dryness to the end, so you want to keep drinking more, and you can because it's only 4.5%. Like that is I don't want to say simple because that gives it a different color. But it is simple and easy drinking is probably
it's simple and it's without flaws.
Yeah.
And I think what you touched on there was that sherbetiness.
Yeah.
So BRY 97 actually can carry out biotransformation quite efficiently. It's used in IPAs a lot. And two of the compounds that it creates or can create, it depends on the precursors that is available to it from the hops and the malt. But it can create geraniol, which is the like citrusy flavour, and linalool, which is like a lavender flavour. It does depend on what kind of hops are put into the process and at what point. But there will be some biotransformation that occurs from the hops that are put in hot side with the mosaic. So you could be getting those citrus flavours from that.
Yeah.
I feel like it really just brings out like the malt bill as well. Like I feel like the way that you really get the flavour of the malt bill as well, it's just like it harmonises so well.
Yeah. Clean,
I'm just
neutral, like not impeding anything. That's a good kind of baseline to compare the other ones to, I think.
Oh,
Well,
okay. It's so hard. I've already poured out
That's why I said it.
half the can.
I was like, you're going to drink all of that, and actually you're going to want to save it to compare to the others.
It is really more. It's really nice, and I feel like it's not lacking. Like it's not lacking, but even though there's kind of like there's nothing that's like taking over in terms of like there's also for a standard. I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this, but like for setting the standard of like a baseline, it's also quite flavorful in that way as well. Like it's not bland, it's not just like watery beer. Like I've had beers that have not had a lot added, then you kind of go, oh, there's not really a lot going on here, and I feel like there is a lot going
I think that's also down to like the skill of the brewer as well, like getting those mash temperatures right, getting the cleanliness right. But yeah, if you were a home brewer and you just wanted to make a basic recipe that had like didn't have too many additions, you didn't want to worry about it too much, but it's also controlling that fermentation temperature throughout and making sure that you're not fermenting at those higher temperatures, because there's a couple of different ways you can affect the ester production of yeast, and one of those is if you let that temperature creep up, it will stress the yeast out, and then the yeast will produce more of those yeast flavors.
Yeah, that people think that making beer is so simple.
Oh, it's
like,
easy.
Making beer is simple. Making really good beer is clever.
And making consistent beer is even harder. Even harder,
that's so
Imagine
true.
you were making a cake where all of your ingredients suddenly changed every day.
That's so good. Well, so before we drink it all, let's compare it to another one. So our second one, Experiments in Yeast. Number 2 is LalBrew Aurora. All right, so it says on the back here, this is a newly developed strain, Alix. Tell us a little bit about this one.
Yeah, this is a special limited edition release.
Ooh.
So this year we have kind of trialled a different concept where we have taken some yeast that we've got in our yeast bank and released one of them as a limited edition release. So we've done one production batch of it and then it all got released in 500-gram sachets. So unfortunately, it's not available for home brewers. And then next year, hopefully, we'll do something different. Or if it's popular, then we can like add it to our core range. Just kind of a different approach to how we launch products. There's still a lot of like. So the thing with Lallemand is they are incredibly expensive to buy. They are the most expensive dried yeast on the market. But we put a lot of time and effort into characterizing our strains and giving them to brewers beforehand, getting feedback from them, quantifying them using university studies, and being able to give you guys or brewers as much information as possible about these strains before we release them to the market. So a lot of time and effort and education goes into that kind of part of it, and like building pitch decks and stuff like that for the products with as much information for brewers as possible, because as we've said, there's a lot of inputs and a lot of outputs. So when someone calls and go, I want to make this crazy nonsense, can you help me? Then I have an answer. So Aurora is the limited edition. It is peach and citrus. I actually don't know if people are privy to this, but it is actually a Kvike strain.
Okay.
It's a cryo-tolerant Kvike strain. So when we released it, some of my colleagues at our global team meeting had a conversation in a taxi on the way home saying, wouldn't it be cool if we released a yeast and we also released like a style of beer, like invented a style of beer that yeast could make, like could be used to make.
Yeah.
So alongside the release of the Aurora, we also released style guidelines and brewing guidelines for what we've termed a Northern IPA. Okay. So every country has a north, every city has a north. There's lots of norths. So it's easy to apply to wherever you live. We've got a West Coast IPA, we've got an East Coast IPA. Why not a Northern IPA? So a Northern IPA style is kind of like a West Coast IPA with a slightly lower ABV, slightly lower IBUs, with those tropical fruit flavors and aromas from a New England IPA. Okay. So it's like them spliced together. So this was released with some style guidelines, with some brewing guidelines. The brewing guidelines don't say use a really boring malt bill and just use mosaic hot side and then ferment it with that. So this, I guess, won't fall into that category. Right. But I think he brewed it at a lower fermentation temperature. It's just kind of a different IPA in comparison to the first one.
Yeah. I definitely get that peach and the stone fruit, and it's like, whereas the other one was sherbety, this one's juicy.
It's interesting because when I first was like smelling it, before you had said about the like peachy citrusy, I almost was a bit like, oh, it's for me, it's like landing in a bit of like a lemony way, my thought of what I was gonna taste to what I've actually tasted is very different, because I was like, oh, it smells quite like tart, quite like lemony, and I'm like expecting it to be more tart. But then, you know, especially comparing it, like the first one smelled a little bit more sweet, this one for me just smelled more like it was going to be tart. But then when you said about the citrus and the peach, I went back to smell it and I was like, oh, my brain almost calibrated what you were saying I should be getting. I'm like, yeah, actually it is now, I'm now getting that combination of the two, and it almost kind of hit my brain almost like a peach iced tea type. And that's all. Then I was like, yes, immediately. And tasting it, I was like, that is not what I expected it to taste like. It's really lovely, but like completely, it's a complete mindfuck, because I was like, not what I thought I was going to get taste wise. And I'm like, oh, it's equally just as
but it still
boorish.
Falls into that. So the other really interesting thing with yeast and brewing beers and naming beers and what style the beer is that there's no law around what you're naming beers. Yeah. So both of you kind of name your beer whatever is appropriate to what your audience will think it will be. Yeah. So both of these would fall into pale ale category, as in that's just all of our acceptance of what that is. You could name it a stout. You could put stout on that can and no one would stop you. Yeah. But people would buy it and be confused. So you have to kind of like, when people say, oh, you know, there are BJCP guidelines of what these styles should taste like, which gives you an indication, but ultimately at the end of the day, you can write anything on the can. So yeah, I think it's interesting that they are both pale ales, but just the difference in yeast gives those two very, very different flavor profiles.
Yeah.
Did anybody over here do that North IPA, like a Northern IPA, in the sense of like
I'm not quite
properly
sure
to your style guidelines?
I'm not quite sure. I think a lot of people used it for IPAs and just named it IPA. And before we've launched it, Andy took the trial batch that we had that we was sending out to brewers. And my colleague Andy went up to Mack Brewery at the very, very north of Norway, and did a brew with them. And then like documented the day and wrote like a article post about it. But yeah, they brewed the Northern IPA style. And he actually saw the Aurora lights while he was up there, which was
Oh my
really
God,
cool.
that's amazing.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it was really cool. I mean, there was lots of different experiments done with it. One of the aims when we give brewers our like experimental yeasts or like things that we're thinking of launching is that we don't really give them a whole load of criteria of what to do with it, because brewers inherently want to break things. So we'd rather they break things with the experimental batch than after we've released it.
And we can learn from brewers that way as well. Like we do that too. Like you take it and this is what we think it should do, and this is how we advise you to use it. But have a play and see what happens, and that's how you find out that actually this application can be done for it and actually works really well. So we do that too.
Yeah, it's a good way of testing out what people think of your product and getting good feedback.
Yeah, and I think as well, like from a supplier side, we can all come up with these amazing products and be like, this thing's really great. But if a brewer doesn't want to use it or doesn't find the best way to use it for them, what's the point? Like, we've got to involve, you've got to involve the brewers as well, because they're the ones that need it at the end of the day.
I think it helps that also like all of the technical sales managers globally for the brewing division of Lallemand are all ex-brewers. So we all, have our networks of people, but we also have experience in different size breweries and are able to kind of forward plan what we think might happen when things are happening, or foresee problems with products before they've even come to market.
Yeah.
Do you get a lot of people? This is like a completely side question to the mission we're on today. It's a little side quest, but do you like get a lot of people that call, they go, I want to make this particular beer, and then you kind of go and like, what yeast should be the yeast that I'm using? Like how often?
I've had a lot of people phone me asking to make low alcohol beer. How do I make low alcohol beer that doesn't taste like wort? So that's been interesting, and purely from having worked with breweries over the past year of like them developing products, and like also my colleague Andy did a lot of research into the low alcohol space before we launched the Loner yeast, which a lot of breweries use for their low alcohol beers. So that kind of gives me an understanding of like, here are the practical tips. Also, a lot of the promotional stuff that we produce, or like the Lallemand Brewing produce, kind of is around the characterization of the product, as opposed to like how to practically use it in your brewery to get the best results. So especially with low alcohol, it's quite tricky to kind of, so I have a couple of like bullet point lists of like, this is what you need to think of with your malt bill. This is what you need to do with your mashing. This is what you should do with your boil time. This is what you should do with the fermentation and the process. And like, so that kind of advice is what I've given a lot of this year. Get a lot of people calling, being like, I've done this, help.
I was going to say, does anybody come to you after the fact? They're like, when you say they've broken it, they're like, I've broken it.
I definitely get more after the fact than before the fact. And I'm quite happy for people to call me before they do a brew. That's absolutely fine. So there's a lot more like free brewery consultant troubleshooting stuff that happens. Yeah. The first question I will always ask when someone calls me with a problem like that is, has your temperature probe fallen out of the back of your FE? That's always the first question, because the number of times people are like, oh, it just is not working. And you're like, okay, well, is your temperature probe right? Because your tank could be like frozen and you wouldn't know it. Yeah. So there's a lot of surface level questions to start with. Yeah. But yeah, it's really interesting to be able to kind of do that problem solving for brewers of different scales, different sizes. Homebrewers call me as well with problems. They don't tell me that they're homebrewers when they call me, which isn't hugely helpful. I had someone call me asking about Philly Sour not fermenting, and I was like, well, what temperature is it at? And it was at like 15 degrees. And I was like, oh, it's a bit too cold. Yeah. And they were like, oh, it's okay, I'll go and put my pond heater in it then. I was like, oh, you're a home brewer, you're not a commercial brewery.
I just love the idea that you're like, oh, and like the sort like, oh, what yield are you trying to make? And then like telling
20
you
litres.
and you're like,
now I start asking maybe before we get to that point, like, have you got a pond heater handy?
not the thing that I would expect someone to be like, yeah, I'll just go grab that. But I think that's
I'm always happy to help anyone. And to be fair, actually, the home brewers when they call are always surprised that I'm happy to help them. I'm like, you're technically our customer as well.
Yeah.
Like, there's no.
I was gonna say, I think that's really lovely. The fact that you're like, it's not a case of you're kind of going. I think as a non person in the industry in that regard, and as someone that doesn't homebrew either, like my brain would be like, if I was homebrewing, I'd feel like not apprehensive to call, but I'd be like, oh, I bet they've got like so many more important people and things to do. So the fact that you're like, no, you treat them just as equally as important is a really big deal to people, I think.
Yeah, and if I don't have the answer, I'll be able to find someone who has the answer. I think our marketing team recently did a thing where they were trying to work out how many years experience Lallemand Brewing has as a company. I think it was something like over 500 years experience in the brewing industry, like between all the individuals that work there. So yeah, if I haven't heard of it, or
somebody has,
someone's encountered a customer that's decided to do this crazy idea that you've come up with. So there's always someone that can help, and I'm more than happy to point you in the right direction. I also help brewers with things that haven't got anything to do with yeast, like my pump's broken, or this hose does this weird thing. So you have to kind of be prepared to like problem solve all aspects of the brewing industry, not just be like, I'm doing yeast and nothing else.
What was the most like exciting? I feel like this is not like we could have a whole separate like Lallemand conversation, but like, what's the most like not yeast related question you've had to answer, but like that you've been like, I'm actually really excited to answer this question, even though it has nothing to do with yeast, just off the top of your head?
What socks should I wear today? And obviously the answer is the Lallemand socks. Or the
so I feel like socks in the beer industry, like that is a thing.
They're so important.
Socks is like
so important.
I didn't realise when I became a brewer that now in this job my life would revolve so much around designing socks and writing PowerPoint presentations.
So much.
I've just gone to brew days. I've gone to brew days where there's like socks being handed out. You're like, oh, it's amazing, and people are like trading socks and talking about like, oh, well, those socks were amazing. Oh, and these ones give this sock a run for their money, and it's very funny.
Are pretty like elite level of sock. The unofficial BRX sock competition, I think the Lallemand socks did win the year they got launched, and I have since launched a pair that I designed for AB Vickers, which are very retro and very Gen Z.
They were cool,
like white with coloured stripes on them, and they are also elite level of sock.
I might need to get a new sock design.
You're going to need to go out and find me these socks, Joe.
Agency. My phone number's online, my email address online. I'll answer any yeast or sock design related questions.
Joe has a new side quest of when she goes to these events, like, find me Lallemand socks.
I've got Lallemand socks. I've got the little. I haven't got the AB Vickers ones. I've only got the Lallemand ones.
Oh, well,
I'll have to get the AB Vickers ones off you at some point.
Well, when I did it, I ordered from 3 different companies. I ordered sock samples, and then I wore them.
You have to.
Who knew that brewers could do this?
I'm jealous of all the sock game. That's it. Like anytime she'd be like, I've got an extra pair of these, and Joe will give them to me, and I'm like, yes.
Actually,
I wear them all the time.
Farmhouse have good notebooks.
We do have that. We do have really good. Our stone notebooks are they are top tier. I'll never stop having those.
They're so smooth to write on,
and they're waterproof because it's made out of stone.
I think I also got a little Sony desk, Bluetooth Sony.
Did you get the speaker? Yeah. We've only got a few of those left.
Ooh.
Yeah, I got one of those a couple of years ago. It's actually my desk speaker.
They're going to be limited edition soon because I won't get more of them.
Electrical.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes them bar cast is you just put a little bar
There's a little strap on it.
Merch chat.
Merch is important.
Merch is very important.
What do we think of the Aurora beer versus the BRY 97?
I really like this one. I think, I like them both.
I feel like it's choosing between your favourite children. It's like you like them for different reasons. You like them for different reasons. I think like the BRY 97, I feel like that is just like staple. Like again, like when I didn't realise that was sort of like the foundational one really, and it checks out, and that is how it feels. Whereas like Yeah, the Aurora, just there's something about it that I can't. My brain is still working out that I'm just like, I really like it and I just want to keep drinking it, but I can't work out what it is that's making me want to do that. Like, obviously it's a good beer, but there's something about the taste that my brain can't pinpoint that I'm like,
I think it's that
let's try that again.
I think you said when you said that it smelled slightly tart. I think that's it. I think there's that little thing that makes you think about like sour peaches.
Yeah,
it's nice.
And then you taste it and it's not but then it's not sour, and then you're just like, but it's still very good.
It's good. I like it. Don't drink it all because you've got to compare it.
So rude. All right, should we move on to the third one?
Let's do it.
Right. So, Experiments in Yeast 3 Saison. Oh, I'm excited for this one.
I'm excited for this one because I love saisons.
You love saisons.
Yeah.
Like in general.
Okay, so I feel like saisons have a scale. There's the earthy, dirty ones, and then some people label a saison and it's really sour.
Yeah.
So I'm more preference of the sour ones.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of the like earthy kind of savoury ones as much.
I think my preference is the sour. My preference, like if you told me I had to pick one end of that spectrum, I'd probably go towards the sour end. But you could hand me an earthy, dirty one, I'd be like,
I love an earthy, dirty.
Well, this is the thing about the labelling of beer and like naming beer is that like all of that range is called a saison. Yeah. So like when you buy one in the shop, how are you supposed to know?
Yeah, how do you know? This smells like Saison DuPont.
Good.
It's exactly what you should expect it to smell like.
Does it taste like that? Because you've got a very lucrative way of making Saison DuPont.
Wow.
Yeah.
You don't need a specialist Belgian beer shop. You just need Brew's subscription.
Yeah.
It genuinely, it does have that, only from one sip. Hang on. I was going to say, like the immediate taste is like the same as a Belgian beer. Like genuinely.
It's all the yeast. Same base beer, all the yeast. So let me tell you a bit about the yeast. So this is our Farmhouse Saison strain. This was the first hybridized strain that I think we released. And it is, so that means that it's a kind of bred. So it's like genetically engineered, but not genetically modified. So it doesn't count as GMO, but in the same way you'd like breed cows or hops or
where you cross two plants,
crossing two and then getting or like whatever's beneficial. So like a different mix of genetics gets different qualities, and then you'd screen all of those baby ones and then like which ones work better. So through that you can do that process with yeast. For hops, that takes like 6 to 7 years for it to be commercially viable. For yeast,
12, mate.
She's not bitter about it though.
To be fair, that was going to be my question at the end. Was like, how long does it take?
8 is fast. Like 12 is average.
Yeah, but a hop plant takes a long time.
Yeah, because that takes longer to it takes longer to grow.
You can breed yeast and you can have a commercially available yeast in 6 months. So because the life cycle of a yeast is like a day.
Yeah.
So,
we don't like a plant hasn't it? We haven't even got a full size plant in 6 months.
You don't need acres of land to make it happen. You just need a small jar. They're really small. So this is a hybridized strain that we released, and the reason that we hybridized it to get something that was different from either of the parents is that we have created a saison strain, which is STA negative. So that is diastatic negative. All of the big terms. So STA is a gene inside the yeast. Normal saison yeast contain this gene. It's called diastatic yeast or STA positive yeast. And the reason you wouldn't want this in your yeast is this means that an STA positive yeast means that the yeast can emit an enzyme which separate from the yeast that will break down those long chain unfermentable sugars into fermentable sugars during the process of fermentation, after the process of bottling. So you get this kind of like fermentation, so the gravity will drop, so the sugar concentration will drop down, and you'll get this slow creep where you're creating more fermentable sugars and the yeast is eating it up. So that means that you can get over attenuation in package, in bottle. When you open a bottle, sometimes they'll like explode. So that's not really something you want in a product that you're putting out on a shelf. So this is a STA negative strain, so it doesn't have the ability to create that enzyme and break down those long chain sugars, so that you won't get over attenuation. You'll get a finishing gravity, and then it will just continue to be that gravity. You're not going to get little bits of sugar coming off and being fermented after you finish fermenting. So the other thing that we made sure this yeast is that it's POF positive, so that's phenolic off flavour. That's what POF stands for, and that means it's got that saison characteristic, so those phenol flavours. So it's POF positive, it's high attenuating, it's low flocculating, all of the qualities that you would get in a normal saison yeast. The only difference is that it's STA negative. The other difference actually is that it's also sulfur negative. So this yeast cannot emit sulfur. You can ferment it at any temperature and it will never, ever, ever emit sulfur. So this yeast has that technology in it. Nova Lager has that technology in it. Lona, our low alcohol yeast, has that technology in it. And this is just, it actually means that one of the parent cells that they use when they kind of breed these together is this strain that was found in a vineyard in Italy. And this vineyard is known for for not having much nutrient available. So the yeast have just evolved naturally in their habitat to basically keep all the sulfur inside the cell so that they can use it rather than emitting it as sulfur dioxide, hydrogen sulfide. So none of the wines that come from this vineyard have sulfur in them. And that's because these yeast have this like genetic abnormality that means that they can't produce sulfur. So the thing that actually changes, if we want to get really into it, is that there's a base. So a DNA is made up of different bases. And one of these bases is changed in one of these genes. And all it's done is gone from a neutrally charged base to a negatively charged base. That's the difference. And that means that the yeast cannot emit sulfur. So the Nova Lager, the Lona, and the Farmhouse all have this like genetic change in it, built into a gene called the MET10 gene. And that technology is patentable. Yeast is not patentable. You can't like patent a yeast cell. You can patent a name, you can copyright a name, trademark a name, but this MET10 gene is licensed for use only by Lallemand, so that we have access to be able to provide these sulfur negative strains, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Tori looks
That's
lost.
absolutely what? No, I'm like literally. I think that is
science.
just genuinely what. Like I like science in general. Like I like reading about stuff, but like I was never a good science student because I feel like I like science when it's stuff that I'm interested in, as opposed to like just learning the basics of science. And like that is so genuinely fascinating.
Yeah.
Like genuinely fascinating as a person that like never did really, really intense sciences. Like it is so interesting to just be like, yeah, this one region of Italy has this one strain.
You go around because there's a couple of different ways you can find yeast. So you can genetically modify it, which means you can't sell it in Europe or in the UK, or you can sell it in America, you can sell it in Canada, you can sell it in South America. And we do have some genetically modified strains, but you wouldn't find them here. You can have your yeast library, so you have your like frozen culture collection that you have, and you can expand that by purchasing other yeast companies or other companies that have culture collections and kind of absorbing them into your culture collection. The other way is to it's called adaptive laboratory evolution, or ALE for short.
Fitting.
And so
See what I did there?
Yeah, you see what you did there.
Yeah.
You take your yeast and you put it, like, do a fermentation with it, and you kind of expose it to really harsh environments, so high alcohol or really high dry hopping or like a weird concoction of sugars, and you basically repitch it a bunch of times, and it's survival of the fittest. So the yeast that is still fermenting at the end are going to be the ones that are adapted to that environment. And you can use that when you're hybridizing the yeast as well. So you can kind of create these baby yeasts, screen them for what qualities you want them to have, and then put them in these environments and make them even better at what they're doing. Because your yeast will change over the course of 40 evolutions. So adaptive laboratory evolution, or ale. And then the other thing you can do, which is my favourite word, is you can go around and you can go bioprospecting. So you go around with your swab and you can just swab things.
See, because there's
a
wild
whole
there's just
Wikipedia
yeast
dedicated
and
to it called Milk the Funk. And yeah, you can go
Bio-
around with your
Milk the Funk.
Milk the Funk is a Wikipedia, like a wiki of people who go around searching for new yeasts. Yeah, so you can go around with a little cotton bud and you can swab things. So Philly Sour, which is one of our strains, was found on a tree in a graveyard in Philadelphia. That was a bioprospected strain. And this
That's fucking
Italian
metal as
vineyard-
fuck.
And this Italian vineyard strain was also a bioprospected strain. So you just go around with a little swab. A good place to start to find them, if you want to do this, is rotting fruit. So fruit trees, or any kind of like tree that's got a fruit that can like rot. But yeast is all around us. There's loads of yeast. The only thing is, and you will find new yeast. You will absolutely find new yeast if you go and swab things, like yeast that, you know, have evolved or adapted to whatever environment they live in. The only problem is they have to ferment the sugars that are available in wort, which are, you know, quite limited, and then it has to make a good tasting alcoholic beverage.
Because it could put off something that isn't tasty, right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't tend to promote and launch products that don't make tasty beer. That'll be
if you've gone and like swab something and just chucked it in a beer, like that could give you something that's not. You're like, oh well, that's not a. Great
the only caveat is please don't don't just get like the swab and like whatever. A lot of people will like then separate them out. So you'll like put them on an agar plate and then like take a colony of an individual thing and grow it up. The only thing is, which is fine, you can do that and then you can put it in wort and see if it ferments. You can even get wort and just put it outside, like a Belgian kind of style, and any yeast that falls into it will start fermenting it. The thing you need to check is that the pH has dropped. Because if the pH hasn't dropped, you could be susceptible to having bacteria in it that might make you very sick. So you do need a safe pH around the 4.2 pH, whereas beer normally starts at like the 5 pH. Mm-hmm. So over the course of fermentation, the pH will drop. So if the pH doesn't drop, even if you've made alcohol, please don't drink it.
I've got some questions. Again, if you don't know the answers to these questions, because I've just asked them on the spot, like,
go for it.
Absolutely fine. I guess first question is like, when you guys are creating these new yeast strains, are you fairly certain that like they're gonna be ones that are gonna work well in bit? Like, do you kind of do you go about it like, we want to crossbreed these, or is it trial and error?
So if we do a hybridized yeast, there will be an aim in mind, and we will start with parents that will achieve that aim, and then we will be screening for that aim. So that, if it's genetically modified, again, we're aiming for this product or like a combination of these products. If it's bioprospecting, a lot of the times the universities will give bioprospecting as like a project to master students to go out and do this. So then they will possibly approach us and be like, we think this will be a good strain, what do you think, kind of thing. Okay. Or we work with labs in collaboration with labs and colleges to be able, like in the US and in Canada, to work on projects that like are bioprospected yeasts. So the Philly Sour strain was was from a university. I think the wine strain that we use as a parent is from UC Davis in California. So these are kind of owned by universities and they're like used as kind of like research projects. A lot of the time, these master students won't find anything, and they won't find anything tastes good or safely makes beer. So like, it's kind of a needle in a haystack kind of situation. And then with the adaptive laboratory evolution, you're aiming for making this yeast better in these conditions, because those are the conditions you're going to grow it in. So there's an outcome. The thing with the bioprospecting thing is there is a lot of luck. Again, you need it to ferment the sugars in wort, you need it to taste good. And as Lallemand is a dried yeast company, you also need the yeast to be able to be dried. That's a whole other caveat. Like the fact that these yeasts are produced in dried form, there's a reason that there's way more range of yeasts available in wet than there is in dried, because a lot of yeast don't like going through the process of removing 97% of the liquid out of the cell and then still being alive. So like, I mean, I wouldn't like that either.
No, I don't think I would.
Yeah. So there's a robustness that is required for a yeast to be able to be dried successfully and with high enough yields. So that's another caveat that plays into it, which is harder when you're just finding them in the wild than if you're like, this is what we're aiming for with these criteria.
That is so cool. So I've literally I opened up a separate Google tab and I've just put bioswabbing because I'm like, I want to look at that after, because that's bioprospecting, because that's so cool about the idea of just
do you want to hear another really cool nerdy fact?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah,
Always.
I absolutely do.
Well, this is like a curveball nerdy fact. So when you're doing lab-based hybridization techniques, so there's a couple of ways you can do it. We'll talk about, okay, so how do you make yeast a cell that like just replicates a bunch of times, mate with another cell? So yeast actually do have like a male and female equivalent. It's called alpha and A. And you take these yeasts and you move them really close to each other. And if they're interested in each other and they're both different like genders, let's say, or like sexualities. I don't know if yeast has a sexuality. Let's say gender. Then they will kind of like pincer themselves toward, like the shape of them will change from circular to like growing towards each other. Yeah. And that's called schmooing. And then when
I love that so much.
That wasn't even my nerdy fact. When the yeast schmoo, you then get the exchange of genetic like information, and you'll get baby yeast that have like some of the mother and some of the father yeast kind of thing. So how do you, if you are just putting a bunch of yeast in a Petri dish with another bunch of yeast, they're all near each other, you're kind of mixing them together, is the really cheap way of doing it, rather than like individually moving them with a microscope kind of thing. You can just put them all in a Petri dish. How do you know, if you shake that up, which ones are the baby yeast and which ones are not? So they do something called like knocking out like an ability to create an amino acid or like process an amino acid, which is the basis for for the idea of why the dinosaurs aren't going to ever escape from Jurassic Park.
What?
So Jurassic Park, it says it in the film. In Jurassic Park,
Which Jurassic Park?
No, it's in Jurassic Park. the original one.
The original one.
The idea is that they knocked out the ability for these engineered dinosaurs to create this amino acid, and then they planted loads of trees or plants that create this amino acid. So if the dinosaurs were ever to escape, they would all die because they would not have the ability to, like, they're basically manufacture. Yeah, so that is the premise behind why the dinosaurs will never escape. But I mean, I feel like that's lacking in the later films, because they definitely all escape.
They definitely all escape.
And they don't all die.
No, in my brain was like, they are definitely leaving the second the power goes out and they can get out there. That's blown my mind.
I don't know where this information has come from.
Yeah. It probably has been mentioned in the film, but my non-educated pea brain in science had no idea until you've just when you've just broken it down for me.
Yeah.
The thing is if
somebody
just says about that,
I'm completely wrong.
No, but that makes so much sense. If I'm watching Jurassic Park, as I have done, and they've said that's going over my head. I literally have no idea. But you've just made that sound so accessible that I'm like, I actually know what you mean.
So in the mother and in the parents of these yeast, you've knocked out two different amino acids, like the ability to synthesize two different amino acids, and so you know if there's been a cross of genetic material because the babies can produce both amino acids.
Okay.
So that's a way of screening out, like, the parents. Because otherwise you're going to be going through individual microscopic cells going, are you different?
I thought the schmooing was going to be like the most... Like, I was like, that's fantastic.
I'm still waiting for someone to make, like, a schmoo PA or some kind of schmooing pun in a beer label.
Or
just call the beer schmooing.
Brewers, get hold of us and let us know if you're going to make a schmooing.
There's also a comic book about an animal called the shmoo. It's like really old and I think Scandinavian, and it's about this animal that like apparently is like really edible and tastes. I don't know. It's really weird, but if anyone has any vintage copies of this of the Shmoo comic book,
get hold of
Alex. Also in the market for like all Shmoo memorabilia.
Shmoo gear.
Brilliant. I love it.
Oh well, my other question was going to be, because obviously we know like how long roughly it takes with like hops and stuff when it's you've got experimental from the point that it's created and then the point that it is run as like an experiment to the time that it actually is given a name and released. Is there like a similar process with yeast where you kind of go, we've got something, here's like a temporary experimental name, we've trialed it, it's good, or do you just know right away?
So yeah, we'll trial it and make sure it's good before we release it. But yeah, there's a kind of like a funnel, like a pipeline of like, these are all the projects that we're working on, these are the like things that we want from them, and then like we have a whole lab based out in Montreal and our new product and like R&D team that will work on these projects that are led by the sales team being like, we think that there's a gap in the market for this would be really cool to have. So yeah, it's not like the life cycle of a yeast is very short, but like also there's the whole commercialization and like, can we produce this on large scales? Is it going to be viable? Like, is it actually going to work for the brewers that we're releasing it to? Then sending it out to the brewers, making sure everyone likes it or has given us feedback enough that we have feedback to give to brewers. So yeah, it isn't like, it's 6 months to make like a new yeast, but it's, you know, a year, 2 years, maybe even longer. Sometimes there are projects that we've worked on and then it just gets put in the culture collection until we feel like we maybe have a use for it or we want to go back to it.
And when you have it, when you send it out to the brewers for them to trial, is it kind of like, oh, we would use it for this, but, or do they tend to just kind of go, we'll just try it for what?
So we send them out in like, so they'll sign an NDA and then we send them the stuff and then we'll send them some like kind of guidelines maybe on like what we think it would make a good beer, because we're not like blindly go, well, I mean, you can tell from these 4 beers, like if you just sent something out blindly and went, good luck, like there is things that you need to like have information about, like attenuation or flocculation ability or like flavor profile. So we have some of those benchtop trials that we'll do at the lab, and then we'll send them out with that information and then fermentation sheets and things like that. And then they'll send us back the data and the feedback from that. And then we'll use that to create our technical data sheets and those like lovely flavor wheels. And then we'll have all of that information to give to the brewers when we release it commercially.
Amazing. I don't know if we actually show the can, so I'll show the can just in case we didn't.
Really
Experiments
cool
in Yeast.
Yeah, they are really
3.
cool cans, yeah.
And that's the Saison one. And genuinely, this is almost gone. I don't have a lot of it.
I did do a lot of chatting for that one.
No.
It's so good.
I tried like to not drink too much of it too quickly, but this one, I think so far, I like them all, but so far I think this is hands down my favourite. That's because I love a Belgian beer. Is a Belgian like this to me is like
our final beer, Experiments in Yeast, number 4, LalBrew Wit, and this is a pale wit.
Yeah. Another kind of Belgian-y strain, I guess.
And I love a wit beer as well, so that's why I'm like, I'm happy for this.
Okay, well, here's the caveat.
Okay.
This is not a wit beer because it's not got wheat in it.
I didn't even. So I've read none of them because of the fact that I was like, I'm not going to read
amount of wheat
anything
in the grain bill. I'm pretty sure it was pretty basic though. There might have been a tiny amount of wheat added.
Well, yeah, of course, because it's all going to be the same base, isn't it?
The cans do say barley wheat, so there must have been a little bit in there.
But I don't think it's a huge contribution.
I mean, it's about as clear as the others, so
it's not
as clear, but it's not, it's not wit beer hazed.
Yeah.
Hazed, yeah. And it does say on the back, it does mention like banana and spiced aromas, but it's not as heavy as like what you'd normally.
Yeah. So when I tried these at GBBF, I think they were like, I think this was not. It says wit on it, but it's like not designed. I think this is an interesting one because it shows how much like the recipe design influence like works in collaboration with the yeast to give the flavors. So I don't think when you drink it, you immediately think wit beer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And that's probably because the amount of wheat that's in the grain bill is pretty low.
Yeah.
Or it's the same as all the other ones. So it's banana. The flavors of the yeast are banana and spice and clove. So it's not because it's not got a whole lot of wheat in the malt bill. You'll actually not get a huge amount of those phenolic flavors. So 4VG flavors, which is 4-vinyl guaiacol. we tried. I know that Andy slightly underpitched this yeast, I think, and also increased the fermentation temperature just to try and drive that ester production with it. But because there's not the wheat in that, like, to start with, there isn't the starting material for the flavors that you would associate with the wit beer, or as many of them. It doesn't have that kind of like in your face wit beer flavor.
I definitely get the clove. And if you do like a deep sniff, you get the banana.
I was going to say, for me, it comes through more as like when you are quite heavily sniffing.
Yeah.
I think this just really shows like all the different beers that you can make with very basic ingredients, like super minimal ingredients.
I was going to say, like, the fact that you've got 4 beers that have all used the same base, they all taste wildly different. Like, even the 2 pales taste like completely when I say different. Wildly different, I don't mean that in like a rude, like not good way. Like, they all taste really distinct. Good, but they're all very distinctly different tastes. Yeah. And if you handed me to them and like I didn't know that this is, I would never assume that. I would assume. A lot of people assume that
it's the hops or the malt because they're the things that you can immediately chew in your mouth and or smell and be like, oh, that smells like mango, that smells like peach. But like the influence that yeast has on not only just the alcohol content, but the mouthfeel, the body, the flavor, all of these different like phenol characteristics, the biotransformation, like there's so much more going on than just yeast makes alcohol and fizz.
Yeah. And I think Joe and I were saying as you were getting the beer as well, is like they're all 4.5%. They're all like, it's not even like any part of this has changed the ABV. Like, it's all 4.5%. It's all the same base. The fact that the yeast strains have made them so distinctly different is just so impressive. Like, genuinely, I think I would have, if I blind got it, I probably would go, oh, the Saison, oh, that's a Belgian yeast strain. And then you've got, I would have thought maybe the Aurora, I'd go, maybe they've added like a little bit of something else into it to kind of bring out that like peachy element.
Yeah.
Really interesting. I can't encourage people enough to try these 4 beers just if you want to nerd out on yeast, because it's so interesting.
I think experiencing the difference in those flavors as well, like, you can describe them as much as you want, but like really seeing like them and then being like, oh, I would have expected those flavor differences to come from a different dry hop or a different whatever, like, and it actually just be the yeast is quite cool. I think it plays a huge part in brewing beer, and also Andy's done a great job of brewing these beers. Like, they're super clean, they're super like really a great example of a quality like brewer, like a quality home brewer, like obviously turned into commercial brewer, and like that attention to detail really does make those consistent brews and good quality brews. And I think that really comes across in these yeasts because there's not, or in these beers, because there's not anything to like hide behind particularly. Like, some of them have some puff characteristics, but it's not in your face. Some of them have some like different tropical kind of aromas, but it's not in your face. And so it's really like that backbone of good quality brewing, good quality ingredients is the bit that's made these beers. And you can make this beer, for example, if you pitched it at a higher rate and you fermented it at a lower temperature, it would again taste like a completely different beer. So I think there's something to be said about brewers using ingredients like in a really interesting way, rather than just relying on things saying, oh, well, this yeast tastes like pineapple, and this yeast tastes like lager, and this yeast tastes like mango, and so like and then just changing the strain every time. Whereas like Andy uses BRY as his base yeast, but like he makes just a bunch of different beers that all taste different. And there's so many different ways that you can influence what those final products will taste like, that don't involve just finding a new yeast or going and leaning on something tasting like what it says on the label.
Yeah. And we've been talking recently about like layering, like building and layering flavor, and you can't forget the contribution that yeast makes. Like, we want you to chuck loads of hops in it, and we've got all these amazing hops. Not just me, other hop people. Like, everyone thinks you got to chuck a load of hops at it.
I think the general public think that
It's just
The flavour
hops,
of
right?
it
It's
comes
just
from hops.
everything comes from hops, right? You chuck it all in,
Yeah.
and that's not
You've done a
true.
great
Like,
marketing job. It's all the socks.
I
That you've
mean,
given us.
it was before me. I think it was before me that they worked that out. But like, everyone thinks it comes from the hops, but actually, it's about layering and building with all these different ingredients and the ways that you put them together. You put that jigsaw of the beer together. You know, it doesn't have to be chuck all the hops at it. It could be this combination of malts and this particular yeast and these hops. Like, yeah,
And then you
it's
add
clever.
in the caveat of like, if you add hops at like different points in the
Right.
process, they contribute different like precursor compounds
Yep.
for different biotransformation. Like, you can go real nitty gritty with it. Like, there's so many inputs: time, temperature, pressure, ingredients and like processing that give you this final product at the end. So that's what makes every single beer different.
Yeah.
That's what's really wild though as well, is because like you said, you can be like, oh, and now we're going to dry hop on this one, and then that will change that. Like,
it'll add
he
something
could
else.
have taken one whole beer, just one recipe, one yeast strain, and then been like, okay, now let's play with hops and see how different all of those fall. The fact that it was like not even let's play around with the different
really
times to have the
minimised
hops
the
and everything.
variance.
It's literally and they are still so different. Is impressive in itself. This is going to be a really dumb question, but I don't mind asking a dumb question. So obviously none of these are like lagers, right?
Yeah.
But like, could you do a similar experiment with like lagers to be like, we're going to do lagers with 4 different yeast strains?
And I think these all turned around quite quickly, so it probably wouldn't be. I think he uses a lot of Nova lager, I think, actually, for his lagers, which is like a kind of quicker lager yeast that we do, which is also the sulfur negative characteristic. But that, you could do that same malt bill, same mosaic with a lager yeast fermented at a cooler temperature, and you'd get something that tastes like a lager.
Oh, because Joe and I have said so many times, like, we'd love for people to do experiments like this. Like, this is the stuff that we nerd out over.
Much time and effort that goes into making all these. And also, it's whether they're commercially viable. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do you sell them as a set?
Yeah.
Or do you just brand them as individual things? I mean, I think the people that are actually doing a lot of this stuff are the home brewers.
Yeah.
Because they have the time and the like non-commercialized part of it to kind of like experiment. But it's really tempting, I think, as a home brewer or like home brewers that I've spoken to, it's really tempting to mess around with all of the new products at like all at the same time, rather than taking your time and doing like, I'm going to change.
What's the best
like
part
doing
about
a
each
smash
thing.
beer and testing it out. Yeah.
I have done this experiment with the guys at the Worthing Homebrew Club at Beer No Evil with Gareth, and they designed a smash recipe, and then they each ordered it from Malt Miller, and then Malt Miller put in different Lallemand yeast. They didn't know what they were going to get, and then they each received the pack. They each brewed a beer, like on their own kit or whatever, and then they brought the beers, and then we sat around and we guessed what the yeasts were, which was really cool.
That's fun.
Thankfully, I did get them all right.
Oh, good. I was going to say, because that's actually really hard.
I know. I actually was like kind of scared going into the homebrew club, being like,
because you're like, oh god,
please think less of me.
My yeast credentials.
Yeah,
that is so cool though.
Yeah, it's
like
a really cool experience. So if you're part of a homebrew club and you want to set this up, like the Malt Miller can do like a recipe, and then you can buy it for your kit. I think
we love the guys at the Malt Miller as well.
Yeah, you can buy it for your kit, and then I'm sure if you speak to Rob, he can put a different sachet of Lallemand yeast in each of the packets that get sent out. Because I know that you can set up recipes as a homebrew club on it as well. So it's a really cool experiment, and it's really nice to taste everything side by side. So to be able to do that with a group of people as homebrewers is probably like I would say the best way to do it. Or getting this pack from Bruiser.
There you go. You get this pack. Like, as soon as I saw this was coming out, I was like, Tori needs to try this, because we've been talking about it for so long.
We've been talking about it for so long.
Did 3 back in like 2021 maybe, and
Tartarus did their one where it was mystery, and we were going back and forth about like what could it be that they changed, and we were like and we kept going back and forth of like, did they change the yeast? And I was like no, because they wouldn't have just changed the yeast, would they? And I was like, because that's got to be like challenged.
Mad amounts of different yeasts, so I wouldn't be surprised if Jack
he totally did.
But we were trying to work out like what, and we were like, we're like, it could be the yeast, but is it? Is it? And then it turned out it was. And
But
we were like, more people need to do this.
That one, whereas this one, you
okay,
know
it's
what
like
you're getting.
Yeah, you
It was
had to just guess what was
it a
different.
mystery. So whereas this one, you know, so you can see, you can really see
I'm
those
assuming
differences.
that you can get this, like you can just go on the Bruiser website and order it. I actually have no idea.
Actually,
I got it from Elusive.
Yeah, we ordered them directly from Elusive, and they're still on their website. So
yeah, and you might be able to get them from UnBarred if you, because I don't know if UnBarred have any cans at their tap room as well. But I mean, Elusive's down the road from me, so I ordered enough to get free home delivery, and I just went free home delivery. Because I wasn't around that weekend to go to the place. I was like, free home delivery, great.
Which one would you drink the most of then?
The Saison.
I think the Saison. I think
without question the Saison.
I really like the Aurora.
I like them all,
but the Saison's nearly gone. So
I like all of them, but the Saison is very much like top contender for me is the Saison. But I find that the other ones depends on like the scenario I'm in.
Yeah.
Like I think depends on like the BRY 97. That's like, am I just at a tap room? That's having a conversation. Mm-hmm. That's just like I'm there. I'm not necessarily even like that's not me nerding out over the beer. That's just me being like I just want a good beer so I can have a conversation. Yeah. Whereas like the other ones are very like, oh, am I in the sun? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? But the Saison's like all the time, hands down favorite. I think
so good.
What was your favorite out of them?
I think I like the Aurora the best when I tried them. It was a while ago that I tried them at GBBF. Me and Andy were pouring them on the Discovery Bar for the trade day. And there was a lot of interesting reactions from people trying them all next to each other. Yeah. We had a cask of each one, so nice. It was really cool to kind of get immediate feedback and questions about the products and about yeast. And everyone doesn't know a whole lot about yeast, it turns out.
Just
if people want to learn more about yeast, well, that's the thing. If people want to learn about yeast, but they don't just have you as a resource to kind of like phone up and speak.
Yeah, please don't call me every day about yeast. That's a bit much.
Are there any like? Is there any media that they can go to? Are there any like books, films?
You can subscribe to the Lallemand newsletter. So we have a quarterly, I think, newsletter that goes out that's really interesting. We also have a bunch of best practice documents. So they will kind of cover numerous different topics, but they kind of look like. The ones that I really like are the ones that are for a beer style, so like lager, for example, or wheat beer, for example, or saison, and it will kind of go into that style, what the different kind of categories of that style is, and then which yeasts from our range you could use, and it kind of compares them next to each other, and then how you can tweak your brewing technique to exemplify some flavors or maximize on time that you spent lagering, kind of thing. So those are really good. The other really good resources are like Escarpment as a Canadian yeast company that we work really closely with. We recently launched one of their yeasts called Pomona that they do in wet form, and we've launched it in dry form under the like LalBrew Premium series. And that's like a hazy strain. But they have a really interesting podcast and a really interesting blog and a really interesting newsletter that kind of breaks down those like brewing concepts and goes into some of those adaptive laboratory evolution and like how they discover new yeast and how they create like the story of those things. It's mostly me, sometimes it's Andy. We write a article in the Brewers Journal every edition. So they're kind of fun resources to look at. You can follow us on Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram if you want. I don't always post about yeast. I also post about other stuff, but I'm normally at beer events, to be honest. And then that's probably enough resources, right?
I should think so. Yeah,
I think so, and I feel like that was also a really good that was a really good way to just be like, all right, well, we'll just cut it there. That was good.
Thank you, Alix, for joining us today. We've loved it. We'll have to have you
Great.
back again to talk about yeast again.
I feel like I've got so many more
Let's do it.
questions, but
Let's
I'm like,
absolutely
just
do
stick
it.
about
I
the
have to
beer.
have you back again.
definitely going to have you back again.
Yeah. I can answer all of your burning yeast-based questions.
There you go, listeners. Send us your burning yeast questions and we will pitch them to Alex.
We could even do the history.
Pitch
of yeast.
'em!
We could do a history of yeast and women in brewing and.
Oh my God, let's do it.
I'm sure you've already.
You've just signed up for it.
Watch this space.
You've signed up for it now.
Well, we're definitely going to have to have Alex back, aren't we?
Genuinely. I think the best part though was when she was like, you look lost, and I was like, no, I'm not. I think you could tell the difference between my I have no idea what you're talking about face and oh my God, I am taking it all in.
Totally focused.
My synapses, they're all I was like, oh my God, tell me more things. My brain can't comprehend all the science, and I'm like, I love it. And it was so interesting, and I really genuinely wouldn't be shocked if Jurassic Park did talk about that, and just my tiny pea brain was
just missed it
immediately. No, my brain was like, don't know what that means anyway, so yeah, sure. And then just assumed it was a plot device, and then for her to be like, this is what it actually is, I'm like, oh, that makes sense. Wow.
So do tell us, listeners, if that's not true, but we still love it. And also,
if it's not, I'm going to tell everyone that it is real. It's that when you get that biased information and you're just like, oh, I heard something somewhere, I'm going to go tell everyone it's true.
But also, Tori, if people want to ask you or want to tell you where you can find the complete adventures of Shmoo, where can they get hold of you?
Yes, we need to find a poster or something. But even more so, if you want to talk to me about anyone else that's doing a similar thing that I can try, because this type of stuff absolutely fascinates me. So if you can find anyone else that's doing anything similar, I'm all over it. If you can do it in a lager format as well, I feel like a lager one would be really, really interesting as well. But as we highlighted, I feel like that's cost prohibitive, audience prohibitive. But yeah, you can message me on Instagram at adventures_in_hoptimism. Or you can email me at adventuresinhoptimism@gmail.com. You can go on my website, which I feel like I do need to properly update more than I do, which is adventuresinhoptimism.com. If you want to submit questions for when we have Alex back on, that's yeast-based questions, because I feel like I have a lot of questions.
You always have a lot
just
of
out
questions.
of genuine curiosity. I always have a lot of questions. If anyone else has questions they want to ask about yeast or just general things that spawn off that, you can DM us on Instagram or Facebook at A Woman's Brew. You can email us at awomansbrewpodcast@gmail.com, or you could submit an email via our website at awomansbrewpod.beer. Joe, if people want to talk to you about if they want to battle with you about hops versus yeast,
I mean, you can.
Where can people talk to you?
I was also thinking that you could probably come and talk to me about the commercialization of hops and how that
versus yeast.
Yeah,
it's about yeast.
I mean, you can come and talk to me about yeast, and Alex and I banter about it whenever we're at a thing together. So
Or the best socks, if people want to know your opinion on the best socks. And could you please, if you get Lallemand socks or the one specifically,
ones, I haven't got those.
Yes, if you could get 2 pairs of those, please, I would love that. Thank you so much. I
have the best socks. You can come find me. I'm Love Beer Learning on Instagram. I'm also on Facebook, but I'm mostly on Instagram. I also have a website. It has recently moved, but it's still there, so come to lovebeerlearning.co.uk, see what's happening over there now, or you can email me lovebeerlearning@gmail.com. Let's go finish these excellent beers.
Got so many beers to go finish. What's favourite of the night?
Saison. Definitely the Saison.
Let's cheers on the Saison.
Cheers.
Cheers.